A Werewolf Shifter Romance, written by Amelia Hart. Chapter 1. Ashes and Rain. The rain falls like tears from a wounded sky, each droplet hitting the black umbrella above Ivy Sullivan's head with the persistence of unspoken accusations. She stands alone at the edge of Willowbrook Cemetery, clutching a small bouquet of white daisies, the cheapest flowers she could afford from the gas station on 5th Street. The cemetery stretches before her in neat rows of granite and marble, but her mother's grave sits in the far corner, marked only by a simple wooden cross that will rot within the year. 22 years old, and Ivy has learned that grief tastes like copper pennies and sounds like whispered cruelties. Her dark hair hangs in damp waves around her pale face, and her green-gray eyes hold the kind of exhaustion that sleep cannot cure. The black dress she wears belonged to her mother, the only decent thing Rebecca Sullivan owned that wasn't torn or stained from years of working multiple jobs to survive. She always loved daisies, Ivy whispers to the freshly turned earth, her voice barely audible above the drumming rain. Said they were proof that beautiful things could grow anywhere, even in the worst soil. A memory surfaces unbidden. Rebecca lying in that sterile hospital bed just 3 days ago, her once vibrant face gaunt from months of mysterious illness. Her mother's hand had been so thin, so fragile, when she'd reached up to touch Ivy's cheek one last time. "You're stronger than they think, baby girl," Rebecca had whispered, her voice barely a breath. "Promise me you'll remember that when they try to break you. You're stronger than they know." The machines had started beeping then, nurses rushing in, and those were the last words her mother ever spoke. Now, standing in the rain with water seeping through the holes in her second-hand shoes, Ivy wonders what strength her mother had seen. All she feels is hollow, scraped clean of everything that once made her whole. The sound of approaching footsteps makes her stiffen. She doesn't need to turn around to know who's coming. The heavy tread of expensive leather shoes, the confident gait of a man who's never doubted his place in the world. Her stomach clenches with familiar dread. Well, Jonathan Sullivan's voice cuts through the rain like a blade through silk. "Look what the storm dragged in." Ivy turns slowly, her grip tightening on the daisies. Her father, though she's suspected for years that he's no blood relation, stands 20 feet away, flanked by half a dozen members of the Red Moon Pack. Jonathan's gray hair is perfectly styled despite the weather, his expensive black suit tailored to his stocky frame. At 48, he's the kind of man who commands respect through fear rather than admiration. Beside him stands Victoria, his precious daughter and Ivy's half-sister. At 20, Victoria is everything Jonathan values: blonde, beautiful, and blessed with an alpha wolf that manifested early and strong. Her blue eyes sparkle with malicious delight as she takes in Ivy's bedraggled appearance. "Daddy, she looks like a drowned rat," Victoria says with a laugh that sounds like breaking glass. "Are you sure we're even related to that?" The other pack members chuckle, their eyes glowing briefly yellow in the dim light. Ivy feels their collective disdain wash over her like a physical force, and her own wolf, small, late-blooming, and currently cowering deep inside her chest, whimpers in submission. Jonathan steps closer, his brown eyes cold as winter stone. "Your mother's dead and buried, Ivy. That means your protection is gone." He pauses, letting the words sink in like poison. Not that she was much protection to begin with. "Don't talk about her like that," Ivy says, surprised by the strength in her own voice. "She was worth 10 of you." The backhand comes so fast she doesn't see it coming. Her head snaps to the side, the taste of blood blooming across her tongue as the pack members growl their approval. The daisies scatter in the mud, their white petals instantly stained brown. "You will not speak to me that way," Jonathan snarls, his wolf pressing against his human form. "You're nothing but a mistake, a burden I've carried for 22 years out of misplaced loyalty to your mother." Ivy touches her stinging cheek, feeling wetness that might be rain or might be tears. "Then why keep me? Why not just let me go?" "Because the pack needs to see what happens to weakness," Jonathan replies, his voice carrying to every ear present. "They need to understand that being different, being late, being inadequate, has consequences." Victoria pulls out her phone, the camera lens gleaming like a hungry eye. "Ooh, this is perfect." Everyone at school is going to love this. She starts recording, her voice taking on a sweet, mocking tone. Say hi to the internet, sister dear. Tell everyone how you're too worthless to even shift properly. Ivy's wolf had been late to manifest. 18 instead of 16 like normal shifters. When it finally arrived, it was small, unremarkable, nothing like the powerful beast that ran in the Sullivan bloodline. The pack had whispered about genetic defects, about tainted blood, about how some wolves were simply born wrong. Now, with the camera recording and rain plastering her hair to her skull, Ivy feels the familiar shame burning in her chest. But underneath it, something else stirs. Something that tastes like iron and feels like lightning. The Red Moon Pack has tolerated your presence out of respect for your mother, Jonathan announces, but Rebecca Sullivan is dead, and her protection died with her. You have 48 hours to pack your things and leave our territory. The words hit like physical blows. Ivy has never known any other home, never lived anywhere else. Where would she go? She has no money, no friends outside the pack, no family willing to take her in. Where am I supposed to go? She asks, hating how small her voice sounds. Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn, Jonathan says with a cold smile. You could disappear into the wind for all I care. The pack will be stronger without you dragging us down. Victoria giggles, still filming. Maybe she can live under a bridge somewhere. I hear trolls like company. The pack members laugh again, the sound echoing off the cemetery headstones like the cries of carrion birds. Ivy looks around at their faces, people who watched her grow up, who sat at the same tables during pack dinners, who she once thought of as extended family. Now they stare at her with disgust, embarrassment, or worse, complete indifference. I'll prove you wrong, Ivy says suddenly, the words spilling out before she can stop them. I'll prove I'm not worthless. I'll prove I belong somewhere. The laughter stops. Jonathan's eyes narrow to slits. You'll prove nothing, he says quietly, dangerously. Because you are nothing. You're a genetic dead end. A mistake that should have been corrected years ago. Thunder rumbles overhead, and the rain begins to fall harder. Ivy stands there in the downpour, water running down her face, her mother's grave at her back, and her father's hatred before her. The daisies lie trampled in the mud, their brief beauty destroyed. But as lightning illuminates the dark sky, something shifts in Ivy's chest. A spark of defiance that even years of abuse couldn't quite extinguish. 48 hours, Jonathan reminds her, turning away. Then you're trespassing on Red Moon territory, and we'll treat you like any other rogue. The threat hangs in the air as the pack disperses, leaving Ivy alone with her mother's grave and the promise of exile. She kneels in the mud, gathering the scattered daisies with trembling fingers, while the storm rages overhead and her old life crumbles around her like sand. But somewhere in the darkness, something new is beginning to grow. Chapter 2. Lightning and Fate. 24 hours after her mother's funeral, Ivy Sullivan stares at the single duffel bag that contains her entire life. The cramped attic room she's called home for the past 4 years suddenly feels smaller, the slanted ceiling pressing down like the weight of her circumstances. Through the small window, she can see the Red Moon Pack grounds bustling with activity. Wolves going about their daily routines, blissfully unaware that one of their own is being cast out like yesterday's garbage. Her meager possessions barely fill the worn canvas bag. 3 changes of clothes, a photo of her mother, the tattered romance novel Rebecca used to read aloud when Ivy was small, and exactly $43 in crumpled bills, her life savings from odd jobs around the pack house. The money won't last a week, but it's all she has. A soft knock at the door makes her heart jump. For a moment, hope flares in her chest. Maybe someone has come to help, to offer sanctuary, to prove that not everyone in the pack has a heart of stone. But when she opens the door, she finds only Meredith Hayes, her mother's younger sister, and the one person who ever showed her genuine kindness. Meredith's amber eyes are red-rimmed from crying, and her usually neat brown hair hangs loose around her shoulders. At 38, she's always been the softer version of Rebecca. Same heart-shaped face and gentle nature, but without the steel core that kept her sister fighting until the end. "Ivy, sweetheart," Meredith whispers, glancing nervously down the hallway. I brought you some food for the road. She presses a small cooler into Ivy's hands, and the simple kindness nearly breaks what's left of Ivy's composure. Aunt Meredith, I don't know what I'm going to do, Ivy admits, her voice cracking. I have nowhere to go. Meredith's face crumples. Oh, honey, if Jonathan hadn't made it clear that helping you would mean exile for me too. She takes a shuddering breath. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry I can't be braver. Ivy understands. Meredith has her own young daughter to think about. Her own place in the pack to protect. Self-preservation isn't selfish when survival is at stake. It's okay. Ivy lies, forcing a smile. I'll figure something out. An hour later, she's walking through the rain toward the Greyhound station on the outskirts of town, her duffel bag slung over her shoulder, and her mother's voice echoing in her memory. You're stronger than they think. The bus ticket to Crescent Falls, a neutral city between pack territories, costs $37, leaving her with enough money for maybe 2 meals. The bus ride passes in a blur of gray landscape and anxious thoughts. Crescent Falls has always been a sanctuary city for supernatural refugees, a place where pack politics hold less sway. If she can find work, if she can prove herself somehow, maybe she can build a new life from the ashes of the old one. But as the bus pulls into the station and Ivy steps into the unfamiliar city, reality hits like a punch to the gut. She has no connections here, no references, no pack backing. She's a lone wolf in every sense of the phrase, and lone wolves rarely survive long. The storm that began at her mother's funeral has followed her here, turning the streets into rivers and the sky into a canvas of angry clouds. Ivy huddles under the bus station awning, watching other passengers disappear into waiting cars or stride confidently toward their destinations. She's the only one left standing in the rain with nowhere to go. Her phone, a battered device that should have been replaced years ago, buzzes with a text from Victoria. Heard you finally left. Don't come crawling back when you realize how pathetic you really are. Ivy deletes the message without responding and starts walking. The business district gives way to residential streets lined with old Victorian houses converted into apartments. A few show for rent signs, but even the seediest places are asking for first month, last month, and security deposit, money Ivy doesn't have. By 8 p.m., she's soaked to the bone and desperate. The temperature has dropped, and her human body is starting to shiver uncontrollably. Her wolf remains stubbornly dormant, unable or unwilling to provide the extra warmth that would keep hypothermia at bay. She's crossing Pine Street, hurrying toward what looks like a 24-hour diner, when the world explodes into light and sound. Car headlights cut through the rain like laser beams. Tires screech against wet asphalt, and someone screams. It takes her a moment to realize the sound is coming from her own throat. Time slows to a crawl. Ivy sees the black SUV sliding sideways toward her, its driver fighting for control on the slick road. She tries to move, but her legs feel like lead, her reflexes dulled by exhaustion and despair. This is how it ends, she thinks with strange clarity. Not in some heroic battle or meaningful sacrifice, but slipping on wet pavement in a city where no one even knows her name. Then strong arms wrap around her waist, lifting her off her feet and carrying her to safety with supernatural speed. She hits the sidewalk hard, but she's alive, her rescuer's body shielding her from the worst of the impact. The SUV crashes into a lamppost with a sound like thunder, steam rising from its crumpled hood. Are you hurt? The voice is deep, resonant, with an authority that makes her wolf sit up and take notice for the first time in days. Ivy looks up into the most beautiful eyes she's ever seen, golden amber, like honey held up to sunlight, set in a face that could have been carved from marble. Her rescuer is tall, easily 6'2", with jet black hair, and the kind of build that speaks of both power and careful control. He's wearing an expensive gray suit that somehow hasn't been ruined by their tumble to the pavement. And when he helps her to her feet, his touch sends electricity racing up her arm. Yes, I think so, she stammers, acutely aware of how she must look, bedraggled, homeless, desperate. Thank you. You saved my life. He studies her with those penetrating golden eyes, and she feels like he's seeing straight through to her soul. His nostrils flare slightly, and she realizes he's scenting her, identifying her as a shifter. The revelation makes his expression shift from concern to something more complex. Wariness mixed with an emotion she can't quite identify. "Camden Blackstone," he says, extending a hand that engulfs hers completely. "And you're far from home, aren't you?" The name hits her like a physical force. Camden Blackstone, alpha of the Midnight Ridge Pack, one of the most powerful supernatural leaders on the West Coast. Stories about him are the stuff of legend. How he took control of his pack at 23 after his parents died. How he's never lost a territorial dispute. How he's turned Midnight Ridge into a force that even the Council of Elders respects. "Ivy," she manages, then clears her throat and tries again. "Ivy Sullivan. And yes, I suppose I am." Something shifts in his expression at her surname, a flicker of recognition that makes her stomach clench. Of course he knows about the Red Moon Pack, about her father's position as beta. She waits for the dismissal, the polite but firm request that she move along and not bring her family's shame to his doorstep. Instead, he surprises her. "You're soaked through," he observes, shrugging out of his jacket and draping it around her shoulders. The garment is warm from his body heat and smells like cedar and rain and something indefinably masculine. "And you're shivering. When did you last eat?" The kindness in his voice nearly undoes her. "Yesterday, I think. Maybe the day before." His jaw tightens, and for a moment, she glimpses the alpha beneath the gentleman's facade. All controlled power and protective instincts. "There's a hotel 3 blocks from here. Clean, safe, no questions asked." "I can't pay for a hotel room," Ivy interrupts, hating how the admission sounds. "I can barely afford food." Camden studies her for a long moment, and she wonders what he sees. A charity case, a potential problem, or something else entirely. When he speaks again, his voice is carefully neutral. "Then perhaps we can discuss alternatives. My pack house has guest quarters, and we're always in need of skilled hands. Can you cook, clean, handle basic administrative tasks?" Pride wars with desperation in her chest. Taking charity from a powerful alpha feels like another kind of defeat, but the alternative is sleeping in doorways and scrounging through dumpsters. "I can work," she says finally. "I'm not afraid of hard work." "Good." He glances toward the damaged SUV, where the driver is already on his phone with what sounds like insurance companies. "My car will be here in 5 minutes. We can discuss the details on the way." As if summoned by his words, a sleek black sedan glides up to the curb, its driver stepping out to open the rear door with practiced efficiency. Camden gestures for Ivy to precede him, and she slides into leather seats that probably cost more than her entire wardrobe. The drive to Midnight Ridge territory passes in surprisingly comfortable silence. Camden makes a few calls, his voice low and authoritative as he handles what sounds like pack business, while Ivy stares out the window at the passing city lights. She's crossed a line tonight, stepped from one life into another, and there's no going back. When they finally turn through gates marked with the Midnight Ridge crest, a stylized wolf silhouetted against a full moon, Ivy feels something she hasn't experienced in years. Possibility. Chapter 3. Midnight Territory. The Midnight Ridge pack house rises from the hillside like something out of a fairy tale. All stone towers and gleaming windows that reflect the storm clouds above. As Camden's sedan winds up the circular drive, Ivy presses her face to the window, trying to process the sheer scale of what she's seeing. The main building alone could house 50 families, with multiple wings stretching out like arms embracing the manicured grounds. Gardens cascade down terraced levels, and she catches glimpses of training facilities, workshops, and smaller residential buildings scattered throughout the property. "It's beautiful," she whispers, then immediately feels foolish for the admission. Of course it's beautiful. This is what real pack wealth and unity can create when wolves work together instead of tearing each other apart. "My great-grandfather built the original structure in 1892, Camden says, his voice carrying a note of pride. "Each generation has added to it. The pack has been here for over a century. The contrast to Red Moon territory couldn't be more stark. Jonathan's pack house is a rambling collection of cheap additions and quick fixes, held together by duct tape and desperation. The grounds are poorly maintained, the facilities outdated, and there's always been an undercurrent of dissatisfaction among the pack members. Whispered complaints about poor leadership and squandered opportunities. Here, Even in the storm, Ivy can sense something different in the air. The wolves they pass pause respectfully as Camden's car goes by, but their postures speak of loyalty freely given rather than submission enforced through fear. Children play in covered areas despite the rain, their laughter carrying on the wind like music. The sedan pulls up to a grand entrance where a woman in her 50s waits under the shelter of a stone portico. She's impeccably dressed in what Ivy recognizes as expensive casual wear, her silver hair styled in a perfect bob. When Camden steps out and extends a hand to help Ivy from the car, the woman's sharp blue eyes miss nothing. Not Ivy's bedraggled appearance, not the way Camden's jacket hangs on her smaller frame, not the careful distance he maintains while still being protective. "This is Elena Morrison, our pack administrator," Camden says as they approach. "Elena, this is Ivy Sullivan. She'll be staying in the guest quarters while we discuss potential employment arrangements." Elena's eyebrows rise almost imperceptibly at the Sullivan surname, but her professional smile never wavers. "Of course, Alpha. Miss Sullivan, welcome to Midnight Ridge. Shall I prepare the rose suite? Something simpler will be fine," Camden replies, before Ivy can protest that she doesn't need anything fancy. "The garden room, perhaps. And please have the kitchen send up a meal, something warm and substantial." "Immediately, Alpha." Elena turns to Ivy with genuine warmth. "Miss Sullivan, if you'll follow me, I'll show you to your quarters. You can freshen up while your meal is prepared." The interior of the pack house is even more impressive than the exterior. Soaring ceilings supported by hand-carved beams, walls lined with artwork that spans centuries. And everywhere, the subtle but unmistakable scent, markers that identify this as Camden's territory. Ivy's wolf, who has been cowering for days, finally lifts her head with something approaching interest. The garden room turns out to be larger than Ivy's entire attic back in Red Moon territory, with a queen-sized bed, private bathroom, and windows that look out over the terraced gardens. Rain streaks the glass, but she can imagine how beautiful the view must be on a clear day. "There are clothes in the wardrobe that should fit," Elena explains, opening doors to reveal a selection of casual wear in various sizes. "The Alpha thought you might need to change into something dry. Dinner will arrive in 30 minutes. Will that be sufficient time?" Ivy nods, still overwhelmed by the casual luxury surrounding her. "Mrs. Morrison, I want you to know I'm not expecting charity. I plan to work for whatever hospitality I receive." Elena's smile becomes genuinely warm. "The Alpha mentioned you were looking for employment. We can discuss specifics tomorrow, but tonight, just focus on getting warm and fed. You've had a difficult journey." After Elena leaves, Ivy stands in the center of the room, dripping onto what is probably a priceless Persian rug. The silence feels strange after years of living in a house where every footstep was monitored, every conversation scrutinized for signs of disloyalty or ingratitude. Here, she's simply alone, safe, free to move and breathe without constant judgment. The hot shower is a revelation. The water pressure is perfect, the temperature consistent, and there are more toiletries lined up on the marble shelf than she's owned in her entire life. She lets herself linger under the cascade, washing away not just the grime of travel, but the psychic residue of Jonathan's hatred and Victoria's cruelty. The clothes in the wardrobe fit surprisingly well. Soft jeans, a cashmere sweater in deep green, undergarments that are clearly expensive but still tagged. It occurs to her that Camden must have called ahead during the drive, arranging for everything to be ready upon their arrival. The level of consideration and efficiency speaks to a leader who takes care of his people without making them feel like burdens. Dinner arrives as promised. A tray laden with beef stew, fresh bread, roasted vegetables, and a slice of apple pie that makes her mouth water. The pack member who delivers it is a young woman about Ivy's age with friendly eyes and genuine curiosity. "I'm Sarah," she says, setting the tray on the small table by the window. "I work in the kitchens. Elena mentioned you might be joining the staff?" "Possibly," Ivy replies carefully. "I'm still discussing details with the Alpha." Sarah grins. "Well, if you do stay, you'll love it here. Alpha Camden is the best leader I've ever served under. Fair, protective, never asks more of us than he's willing to give himself. And the benefits are incredible. Healthcare, education opportunities, Even help with housing if you want to start a family. The casual way Sarah speaks about her alpha, with respect but without fear, reinforces Ivy's growing understanding of how different this place is from her old home. She finds herself asking, "Have you been here long?" 3 years. I came from a pack down south where the leadership was less enlightened. Alpha Camden offered sanctuary to anyone who wanted to transfer, and about 15 of us made the move. Best decision I ever made. After Sarah leaves, Ivy sits by the window, eating the most delicious meal she's had in months while watching the storm rage outside. Lightning illuminates the gardens in brief, brilliant moments, and she wonders what her life might have been like if she'd grown up in a place like this, surrounded by genuine community, led by wolves who saw strength as something to be cultivated rather than crushed. A knock at her door interrupts her thoughts. She opens it to find Camden, now dressed in jeans and a black sweater that emphasizes his impressive physique. He's clearly made an effort to appear less formal, less intimidating, but there's no hiding the aura of power that surrounds him like an invisible force field. "I wanted to check on you," he says, his golden eyes taking in her improved appearance with approval. "You look better. More yourself. Thank you. For everything. The clothes, the room, the meal. I don't know how to repay your kindness. You don't need to repay anything. Helping a fellow wolf in need isn't kindness. It's basic decency." He pauses, studying her face. "I've been making some inquiries about your situation. I know about your mother's recent passing, and about your father's decision to exile you from Red Moon territory." Ivy's cheeks burn with shame. "I suppose my reputation precedes me. The defective daughter, the genetic disappointment, the— Stop!" The alpha command in his voice makes her words die in her throat. "Whatever Jonathan Sullivan told you about your worth, he was wrong. I've seen your medical records, Ivy. There's nothing defective about being a late bloomer, and your wolf may be smaller than average, but she's perfectly healthy. You've seen my medical records?" The violation should anger her, but instead, she feels oddly relieved that someone finally knows the truth. "Pack leaders share information when it comes to potential transfers," he explains. "I wanted to understand what I was dealing with before making any offers. What I found was a young woman who survived 22 years in an abusive environment and still maintained her sanity and integrity. That takes remarkable strength. The simple acknowledgement of her suffering, the validation that her experience was real and undeserved, nearly brings her to her knees." She blinks back tears, not wanting to appear weak in front of this powerful alpha, who has shown her more consideration in one evening than her own family managed in 2 decades. "I have a proposition," Camden continues, his voice gentle but businesslike. "The pack has need of someone to assist Elena with administrative duties, correspondence, scheduling, basic bookkeeping. The position includes room and board, plus a monthly salary that would allow you to build some financial independence. The work isn't glamorous, but it's honest and necessary." "What's the catch?" Ivy asks, because years of survival have taught her that offers this good always come with hidden costs. Camden's smile is slight but genuine. "No catch. You work hard, follow pack rules, and contribute to our community. In return, you receive the protection and support that every pack member deserves. It's how functional families operate. Family." The word hits her like a physical blow, because she's never really had one, not in the true sense. Jonathan's household was built on fear and favoritism, not the mutual support and loyalty she glimpses here at Midnight Ridge. "I need you to understand something," she says carefully. "I'm not just late blooming or genetically unfortunate. I'm damaged goods, Alpha Camden. Whatever information you found in those files, it doesn't capture the full extent of what's wrong with me. I don't want you making decisions based on incomplete data." His expression darkens, and for a moment, she sees the predator that lurks beneath his civilized surface. "What exactly are you trying to tell me, Ivy?" She takes a shuddering breath, preparing to destroy the best opportunity she's ever been offered. "I think there's something fundamentally broken in me. My wolf is weak, my instincts are wrong, and I've never been able to form proper pack bonds. Jonathan was probably right to get rid of me before I could contaminate anyone else." The silence stretches between them, heavy with the weight of her confession. Camden studies her with those penetrating golden eyes, and she waits for the inevitable dismissal, the polite but firm explanation that Midnight Ridge cannot afford to take in defective wolves. Instead, he steps closer, his scent washing over her like a warm tide. "Ivy Sullivan," he says quietly, "you are going to discover that everything you've been told about yourself is a lie, and when you do, I hope you'll choose to stay long enough to help us prove it." The offer hangs in the air between them like a promise and a challenge combined. Outside, the storm continues to rage. But here, in this beautiful room with this remarkable alpha, Ivy feels something she hasn't experienced in years. Hope. Chapter 4. Hidden Depths. 3 weeks at Midnight Ridge have transformed Ivy in ways she never thought possible. Working alongside Elena has proven both challenging and rewarding. The pack's administrative needs are complex, requiring attention to detail and diplomatic skills she didn't know she possessed. More importantly, for the first time in her life, her contributions are valued and acknowledged. This morning finds her in Camden's office, organizing correspondence while he reviews territorial agreements at his massive oak desk. The space reflects his personality perfectly, sophisticated but not ostentatious, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a stone fireplace, and windows that overlook the training grounds where pack members spar and exercise. "The Morrison Industries contract needs your signature," Ivy says, sliding the document across his desk. Elena negotiated a 12% increase in the quarterly payments for mineral rights. Camden glances up from his work, and she feels that familiar flutter in her stomach when their eyes meet. Over the past weeks, she's caught him watching her with an intensity that makes her pulse race, but she's assumed it's simply an alpha monitoring a new pack member for signs of instability or disloyalty. "Excellent work," he says, signing with a flourish. "Your organizational skills have improved our efficiency considerably. Elena mentioned you've been staying late to catch up on the backlog of filing. I don't mind. I like feeling useful." The admission slips out before she can stop it, and she feels her cheeks warm. "I mean, the work is interesting, and everyone's been very kind. Ivy," his voice stops her nervous rambling, "you don't have to downplay your value here. We're fortunate to have you." Before she can respond, a commotion outside draws their attention. Through the windows, they can see several pack members gathering around a black SUV that's just pulled through the gates. Ivy's blood turns to ice when she recognizes the Red Moon Pack insignia on the vehicle's doors. Camden is on his feet instantly, his posture shifting into full alpha mode. "Stay here," he commands. But Ivy is already moving toward the window, dread pooling in her stomach like acid. The SUV's doors open, and Jonathan Sullivan emerges with 3 other Red Moon wolves, including Victoria. Her father looks exactly as she remembers, arrogant, well-dressed, radiating the kind of casual cruelty that has defined her entire existence. Victoria clings to his arm, her blonde hair perfectly styled despite the journey, her blue eyes already scanning the Midnight Ridge grounds with obvious envy. "They're here for me," Ivy whispers, her wolf cowering deep in her chest. "Jonathan must have discovered where I went." Camden's expression hardens. "This is my territory. They have no authority here. You don't understand. He's my father, legally anyway, and I'm not officially a member of your pack. I'm just visiting." The distinction matters in supernatural law, and they both know it. As Camden's guest, Ivy enjoys certain protections. But if Jonathan demands her return as head of her birth family, the situation becomes complicated. Pack politics are built on precedent and mutual respect. Violating those unwritten rules can lead to territorial wars. "Come with me," Camden says, his voice leaving no room for argument. "Whatever happens, you stay close and let me handle the negotiations." They make their way to the main entrance, where Elena has already positioned herself to greet the unexpected visitors. Her professional smile is perfectly in place, but Ivy can sense the tension radiating from the older woman. News travels fast in pack communities, and everyone knows about Ivy's exile from Red Moon territory. Jonathan's eyes find Ivy immediately, his expression cycling through surprise, anger, and something that might be satisfaction. "There you are, daughter. You've led us quite a chase." The word daughter sounds like poison in his mouth. Ivy forces herself to stand straighter, drawing strength from Camden's solid presence beside her. "I'm not your daughter anymore, Jonathan. You made that clear at the cemetery." A moment of grief-induced anger. Jonathan replies smoothly, his politician's smile never wavering. "Surely you understand that emotions run high during times of loss. I've come to bring you home where you belong." Victoria steps forward, her eyes glittering with malice. "Daddy was so worried about you, Ivy." "We all were. Imagine our surprise when we heard you were playing house with the Midnight Ridge Pack." A Camden's growl is so low it's barely audible, but every wolf present feels it in their bones. "Ms. Sullivan is here by invitation and under my protection. She's free to leave whenever she chooses, if she chooses." "How generous of you, Alpha Blackstone," Jonathan says, inclining his head in mock respect. However, family matters supersede pack politics. Ivy is still legally bound to Red Moon territory, and as her father and beta of her birth pack, I have the right to reclaim custody. "Custody?" Ivy's voice cracks with disbelief. "I'm 22 years old, not some wayward teenager. You're an unmarked Omega with no independent pack affiliation." Victoria interjects sweetly. "That makes you a dependent family member under supernatural law, subject to paternal authority, until you're claimed by a mate or formally accepted into another pack." The legal technicality hits like a physical blow. Ivy knows the laws. She's helped Elena file enough pack transfer documents to understand the process. Without formal acceptance into Midnight Ridge, or a mating bond to cement her status, she exists in a legal gray area that Jonathan can exploit. Camden steps forward, his alpha presence filling the space like a living thing. "Perhaps we should discuss this matter privately, Beta Sullivan. Pack politics are rarely improved by public spectacle." "Of course," Jonathan agrees, but his eyes remain fixed on Ivy. "Though I trust my daughter will be present for any discussion regarding her future." They move to Camden's office, the atmosphere thick with tension and unspoken threats. Ivy takes a seat as far from Jonathan as possible while Camden positions himself behind his desk like a fortress. Victoria perches on the edge of her father's chair, clearly enjoying the drama. "Let's be frank," Jonathan begins, settling back with the confidence of a man who believes he holds all the cards. "Ivy has always been challenging. Late to bloom, weak wolf, prone to defiance and inappropriate attachments. I'm sure you've noticed these tendencies during her stay here. I've noticed a young woman with remarkable resilience and untapped potential," Camden replies coolly. "Perhaps the challenge lies not with Ivy, but with the environment she was raised in." Jonathan's mask slips for a moment, revealing the fury beneath. "Are you questioning my parenting, Alpha? I'm questioning your motives. 3 weeks ago, you publicly exiled Ivy from your territory. Now you're demanding her return. What changed?" Victoria giggles, the sound like breaking glass. "Oh, this is rich. Tell him, Daddy. Tell him about the marriage contract." Ivy's blood turns to ice. "What marriage contract?" Jonathan's smile returns, predatory and satisfied. "Alpha Harrison of the Mountain Crest Pack has expressed interest in an alliance marriage. He's getting on in years, 63, I believe, and seeks a young, fertile mate to provide heirs for his territory." The room erupts. Camden surges to his feet, his eyes flashing gold with barely contained rage, while Ivy feels the world tilt sideways. Alpha Harrison is notorious throughout the supernatural community. A cruel, manipulative leader who treats his pack like personal property and his wives like breeding stock. "You want to sell me to that monster?" Ivy's voice is barely a whisper. "I want to secure a beneficial alliance for my pack," Jonathan corrects. "Harrison offers significant territorial concessions and trade agreements in exchange for a marriage bond with a Sullivan daughter. Since Victoria is already promised elsewhere, that leaves you." "I won't do it," Ivy says, standing on shaking legs. "I'll never marry him." "You will if you know what's good for you." Victoria purrs. "Harrison's already paid half the bride price. Daddy's counting on that money to expand Red Moon territory." Camden's alpha power fills the room like a physical force. "Get out." Jonathan raises an eyebrow. "Excuse me?" "Get out of my territory. Now. Before I forget the diplomatic protocols that keep our packs from open war. You can posture all you like, Blackstone, but the law is on my side. Ivy belongs to Red Moon Pack, and I have the right to arrange her marriage as I see fit." "Actually," a new voice interrupts, "you don't." Elena appears in the doorway, a thick folder clutched in her hands. Her usually composed expression shows a mix of excitement and grim satisfaction. "I've been researching Ms. Sullivan's legal status since your arrival, Beta Sullivan, and I've discovered some interesting information." She opens the folder, revealing official documents and medical records. "According to these blood test results from Ivy's 18th birthday, she's not genetically related to you at all. The DNA markers clearly indicate different paternal lineage." The silence that follows is deafening. Jonathan's face cycles through shock, rage, and something that might be fear, while Victoria gapes like a landed fish. Ivy feels the world spinning around her, pieces of a puzzle she never knew existed suddenly clicking into place. "That's impossible," Jonathan sputters. "Rebecca was my wife. Ivy is my daughter. Rebecca was your wife," Elena agrees calmly. "But Ivy is not your biological child, which means you have no legal authority over her whatsoever. She's free to choose her own path, her own pack, her own mate." Camden moves to Ivy's side, his presence warm and protective. "The choice is yours, Ivy. Stay or go. Whatever you decide, I'll support." She looks around the room, at Jonathan's fury, Victoria's hatred, Elena's supportive smile, and Camden's steady golden eyes. For the first time in her life, she truly understands what her mother meant about being stronger than they think. "I choose to stay," she says, her voice growing stronger with each word. "I choose Midnight Ridge. I choose my own future." And as Camden's hand settles protectively on her shoulder, she feels something shift inside her. Something powerful and wild, finally stirring to life. Chapter 5. Blood and Betrayal. The revelation of Ivy's true parentage hangs in Camden's office like a live wire, crackling with dangerous potential. Jonathan's face has gone pale beneath his carefully maintained tan, while Victoria stares at the DNA documents as if they might spontaneously combust through sheer force of her denial. "This is ridiculous," Jonathan finally manages, his voice tight with barely controlled panic. "Those tests could be fabricated, contaminated, misread. The tests were conducted by 3 independent laboratories." Elena interrupts smoothly, her professional demeanor never wavering despite the explosive nature of her discoveries. Cross-referenced and verified through the PAC registry database, the results are conclusive. Camden moves closer to Ivy, his protective instincts evident in every line of his body. Who is her real father? Elena's expression grows somber as she flips to another section of the folder. According to the genetic markers, Alpha Marcus Ravenclaw of the Northern Territories. He died in a territorial dispute 15 years ago, but his bloodline was significant. The name hits the room like a thunderbolt. Marcus Ravenclaw had been one of the most powerful alphas of his generation, leading a pack known for their strength, intelligence, and fierce independence. His death had sent shockwaves through the supernatural community, leaving his territory to be absorbed by neighboring packs. "That's impossible," Victoria shrieks, her composure finally cracking. "She can't be alpha-born. Look at her. She's weak, pathetic, barely even a proper wolf." "Weak?" Elena's eyebrows rise as she produces another set of documents. These training assessments suggest otherwise. In just 3 weeks, Ivy has shown remarkable improvement in strength, speed, and instinctual responses. Her wolf may have been suppressed, but it's far from weak. Ivy's mind reels with the implications. Her mother's mysterious illness, the years of abuse and degradation, Jonathan's inexplicable hatred. It all makes terrible sense now. She'd been living proof of Rebecca's infidelity, a constant reminder of Jonathan's humiliation and failure as a husband. "You knew," she whispers, staring at the man who raised her with such cruelty. "You always knew I wasn't yours." Jonathan's mask finally slips completely, revealing the petty, vindictive man beneath. "Your mother was a whore who couldn't keep her legs closed around real power. She got what she deserved in the end." The words are barely out of his mouth when Camden moves, crossing the room with supernatural speed to slam Jonathan against the wall. The beta's feet dangle inches from the floor as Camden's hand closes around his throat. "You will not speak of the dead with such disrespect in my territory," Camden growls, his eyes blazing gold with alpha fury. "And you will certainly not speak that way about Ivy's mother." "Camden, don't," Ivy says quickly, placing a hand on his arm. She can feel the tremor of rage running through his muscles, the barely leashed violence of an alpha protecting his pack. He's not worth it. For a moment, she thinks Camden might ignore her plea and crush Jonathan's windpipe anyway. Then, with visible effort, he releases his grip and steps back, allowing the gasping beta to collapse into his chair. "Get out," Camden says quietly, but his voice carries the absolute authority of an alpha command. "Take your daughter and leave my territory. You have no business here. No claim on anyone under my protection." "This isn't over," Jonathan wheezes, straightening his tie with shaking hands. Harrison still expects a bride, and he's not particular about bloodlines. If he can't have her legally, he'll find other ways. The threat hangs in the air like a poisonous cloud. Alpha Harrison's reputation for taking what he wants, regardless of consent or law, is well known throughout the supernatural community. Pack leaders who oppose him have a tendency to meet with unfortunate accidents. Victoria rises from her perch, her beautiful face twisted with hatred and envy. "You think you've won something, but you haven't. Daddy and I know secrets about your precious pack, about your mother's real death. Cross us, and everyone will learn the truth." "What truth?" Ivy demands. But Victoria just smiles with venomous satisfaction. "Ask him about the nightshade tea," she purrs, nodding toward Jonathan. "Ask him how long Mother really suffered before she finally stopped breathing." The bottom drops out of Ivy's world. Nightshade, a plant toxic to shifters, causing slow organ failure that mimics natural illness. The mysterious sickness that had claimed her mother over months of agony suddenly takes on a sinister new dimension. "You poisoned her," Ivy breathes, the truth hitting her like a physical blow. "You murdered my mother." Jonathan straightens his jacket with deliberate calm. "Prove it." Rebecca's body was cremated. The medical records show natural causes. And who's going to believe the word of an illegitimate bastard with a history of mental instability? Victoria giggles, pulling out her phone to show a recording of Ivy's breakdown at the cemetery. "We have hours of footage showing your unstable behavior. One word from us, and the Pack Council will declare you mentally unfit for independence. Then you'll be right back where you started, under our control." The psychological warfare is masterful and cruel. Even with the truth about her parentage revealed, they're using Ivy's own trauma responses against her, weaponizing years of abuse to maintain their power. Camden's growl fills the room. But before he can respond, Ivy steps forward. Something is building inside her chest. A heat that tastes like lightning and feels like awakening. For 22 years, she's been told she's weak, defective, broken. But standing here, faced with her mother's murderers, she finally understands what Rebecca saw in her. "You want to see unstable?" Ivy asks, her voice carrying an undertone of power that makes every wolf in the room take notice. "You want to see what happens when someone finally pushes me too far?" The windows rattle in their frames as her suppressed alpha nature begins to surface. Victoria backs toward the door, her bravado evaporating in the face of something she's never encountered before. Even Jonathan looks uncertain, his cruel confidence wavering. "Ivy," Camden says quietly, his voice cutting through the building energy like a lifeline. "You're safe. They can't hurt you here. But the dam has been broken, and years of suppressed rage are flooding through her system like molten gold. She can feel her wolf rising. Not the cowering, diminished creature she's always known, but something magnificent and terrible. The power in her blood, inherited from one of the strongest alphas in living memory, finally breaks free of the psychological chains that have bound it. "You killed her because she loved someone other than you," Ivy says, advancing on Jonathan with predatory grace. "You couldn't stand that she chose strength over your pathetic weakness. So you poisoned her slowly, made her suffer, and blamed me for existing." Jonathan stumbles backward, his beta wolf instinctively recognizing the alpha authority radiating from the young woman he'd spent decades trying to break. "Now see here. I see everything." The words come out as a roar that shakes the entire building. Pack members throughout the house stop what they're doing, drawn by the sound of an alpha discovering her true nature. "I see exactly what you are. A coward who murders defenseless women and abuses children to feel powerful." Victoria screams as the windows finally give way, glass exploding outward in a shower of crystalline fragments. Emergency alarms begin wailing throughout the compound as the pack responds to the psychic shockwave of Ivy's awakening. "Please," Jonathan babbles, all pretense of dominance abandoned. "I can explain." "Get out!" The alpha command hits with the force of a physical blow, driving both Jonathan and Victoria to their knees. "Get out of my sight before I forget that murder is illegal!" They flee, stumbling over each other in their haste to escape the building fury of an awakened alpha. Their SUV tears down the driveway with reckless speed, leaving only the sound of wailing alarms and Ivy's ragged breathing. The power slowly ebbs, leaving her swaying on her feet as the full implications of what just happened crash over her. She's not just Ivy Sullivan anymore. She's Ivy Ravenclaw, daughter of one of the most feared and respected alphas in recent memory. The blood of legends runs in her veins, and for the first time, she can feel its true strength. Camden approaches carefully, his hands raised in a gesture of peace and support. "How do you feel?" "Different," she whispers, looking at her hands as if seeing them for the first time. "Like I've been wearing a mask my whole life, and it finally fell off." The suppression is breaking down, Elena observes clinically, though her eyes shine with something like awe. Years of psychological abuse created artificial barriers around her true nature. The shock of learning about her mother's murder was enough to shatter them. Camden nods, his expression thoughtful, which means Jonathan and Victoria know they're in serious trouble. An awakened alpha with legitimate grievances and the legal backing to pursue them. They'll be desperate to discredit her before she can act. "What do you think they'll do?" Ivy asks, though part of her already knows the answer. "Whatever it takes to survive," Camden replies grimly, "including making good on Harrison's bride price, with or without legal authority to do so." The implications hang heavy in the air. An alpha of Harrison's reputation and resources could easily arrange a kidnapping, especially if he had inside help from someone familiar with Midnight Ridge security protocols. The threat is real, immediate, and deadly serious. But as Ivy stands in the wreckage of Camden's office, surrounded by the evidence of her awakening power, she realizes something fundamental has changed. She's no longer the frightened, broken girl who fled Red Moon territory 3 weeks ago. She's the daughter of Marcus Ravenclaw, and it's time her enemies learned what that truly means. Chapter 6. The Taking. 2 days after Jonathan and Victoria's disastrous visit, Ivy wakes to the sound of her phone buzzing insistently on the nightstand. The caller ID shows a number she doesn't recognize, but something cold and familiar settles in her stomach as she answers. "Ivy, sweetheart, thank God." Meredith's voice is thick with tears and barely controlled panic. "They took me. Jonathan and some men I don't recognize. They said if you don't come back, they'll..." The line goes dead, replaced by Jonathan's smugly satisfied tone. "Hello, daughter. I trust you slept well." Ivy's blood turns to ice. "Where is she? What have you done with Meredith? Your aunt is perfectly safe for now. She's enjoying the hospitality of some associates of mine, professional men who understand the value of proper motivation. The question is, how much do you value her continued well-being?" The phone trembles in Ivy's grip, as rage and terror war in her chest. Meredith is the only person from her old life who ever showed her genuine kindness. The only family member who tried to protect her from Jonathan's cruelty. The thought of her suffering because of Ivy's choices is unbearable. "What do you want?" she forces herself to ask. "Simple. You return to Red Moon territory and fulfill your obligations to Alpha Harrison. The wedding is scheduled for this weekend. A lovely autumn ceremony in the mountains. Very romantic, very final. And if I refuse?" Jonathan's chuckle is like nails on glass. "Well, accidents happen so easily in the wilderness. Wild animals, tragic falls, exposure to the elements. Your poor aunt is getting on in years, and she's never been particularly sturdy. The threat is clear, and they both know he'll follow through. Jonathan has already murdered one woman to maintain his power. He won't hesitate to eliminate another if it serves his purposes. I need time to think," Ivy says, stalling while her mind races through possibilities. "You have until noon. After that, Meredith's usefulness expires, and Harrison's patience runs out. Don't disappoint me, Ivy. You know how I handle disappointment." The line goes dead, leaving Ivy staring at her phone in the pre-dawn darkness. Through her window, she can see the first hints of sunrise painting the sky, purple and gold over the Midnight Ridge territory. In a few hours, this beautiful sanctuary might be nothing but a memory. She's barely dressed when Camden appears at her door, his expression grim. Word travels fast in pack communities, and the Alpha clearly knows something is wrong. "What happened?" he asks without preamble. Ivy explains the call while pacing her room like a caged animal, her newly awakened alpha nature chafing against the trap Jonathan has set. Camden listens without interruption, his golden eyes tracking her movements with predatory focus. "It's a trap," he says when she finishes. "Harrison and Jonathan are working together to force your compliance. The moment you set foot in Red Moon territory, you'll disappear into Mountain Crest lands where even the Pack Council can't reach you." "I know it's a trap," Ivy snaps, her patience fraying. "But what choice do I have? Meredith is innocent in all of this. She doesn't deserve to suffer because I finally found the courage to fight back." "And what about you? Do you deserve to be sold like livestock to a monster who'll break you in ways that make Jonathan's abuse look gentle?" The words hit like physical blows, but Ivy forces herself to meet his gaze. "Maybe that's all I'm worth. Maybe this is just who I am. Someone whose existence brings pain to everyone around her." Camden crosses the room in 2 swift strides, his hands framing her face with surprising gentleness. "Look at me, Ivy. Really look at me. Do you see pity in my eyes? Do you see someone who thinks you're worthless?" She stares into those golden depths, seeing strength and determination, and something else that makes her heart race. "What do you see?" "I see the most remarkable woman I've ever met. I see someone who survived 22 years of psychological torture and still maintained her compassion and integrity. I see an alpha with the potential to change everything." His voice drops to a whisper. "I see my mate." The words hang between them like a bridge across an impossible chasm. Mate, the supernatural bond that transcends pack politics and family obligations, creating connections stronger than law or tradition. "That's impossible," Ivy breathes. "I'm nobody, nothing special." "You're everything," Camden interrupts, his thumb brushing across her cheekbone. "You're my fated mate, and I'll be damned if I let them take you away now that I've found you." Before she can respond, he's kissing her. Soft at first, then with growing intensity as years of loneliness and longing pour between them. Ivy feels her world tilt and reshape itself around this single moment of connection, this acknowledgement of something she never dared hope for. When they finally break apart, she can see her own stunned wonder reflected in his eyes. "What does this mean?" "It means you're not going anywhere alone," Camden says firmly. "If Jonathan wants to play games, we'll play them on our terms." Within an hour, Midnight Ridge transforms into a fortress preparing for war. Pack members move with military precision, checking weapons, reviewing territorial maps, and coordinating communication systems. Ivy watches from Camden's office window, amazed by the speed and efficiency of their response. 30 wolves, fully armed and equipped for extended operations, reports Thomas Creek, Camden's beta and military strategist. He's a compact man in his 40s with graying temples and eyes like flint. "We can have them positioned around Red Moon territory within 3 hours." "No," Ivy interjects, drawing surprised looks from the assembled leadership. "A direct assault will get Meredith killed immediately." Jonathan's expecting that response. Camden nods thoughtfully. "What do you suggest?" "I go in alone, as planned, but with backup positioned for extraction rather than invasion. Let Jonathan think he's won until we can locate Meredith and get her to safety." "Absolutely not," Thomas argues. "The risk is too great. Once you're in Harrison's custody, we may never see you again. Then we make sure that doesn't happen." Ivy moves to the tactical map, her finger tracing the mountain roads leading to Harrison's territory. "There's a narrow pass here, about 15 miles from the Red Moon border. If Harrison's people are taking me to Mountain Crest lands, they'll have to use this route." Camden studies the geography with professional interest. "It's defensible terrain. We could set up an ambush, but the timing would have to be perfect. More than perfect," Thomas adds grimly. "Harrison's known for traveling with heavy security. We'd be outnumbered and fighting on unfamiliar ground. Not if we have inside information. Ivy says quietly. Victoria always was a creature of habit. She posts everything on social media, locations, times, even security details. If she's involved in this transfer, she'll document it. Elena appears in the doorway with a laptop, her expression tense but determined. I've been monitoring social media feeds from Red Moon Pack members. Victoria posted an Instagram story 20 minutes ago, showing preparations for what she calls a special delivery to the mountains. The laptop screen shows a series of photos. Victoria posing with armed guards, a convoy of black SUVs, and tellingly, a timestamp and location marker that places them at a truck stop just outside Red Moon territory. She's giving us their route, Camden realizes. Either she's incredibly stupid or she wants to be rescued, Ivy finishes. Victoria may be cruel and shallow, but she's not suicidal. Harrison's reputation for disposing of inconvenient witnesses is well known. She knows that once I'm delivered, she becomes a liability. The realization changes everything. If Victoria can be turned, if her social media addiction can be weaponized against Jonathan's plan, they might have a chance of saving both Meredith and preventing the forced marriage. This is still incredibly dangerous, Thomas warns. Even with inside help, the odds are against us. The odds have been against me my whole life, Ivy replies with new determination. At least now I have something worth fighting for. Camden moves to her side, his presence warm and reassuring. We do this together. No matter what happens, you're not facing this alone. The plan they devise is complex and dangerous, requiring split-second timing and absolute trust in each other. Ivy will surrender herself at the designated meeting point, allowing Jonathan to believe his blackmail has succeeded. Meanwhile, Camden and a small team will track the convoy using Victoria's social media posts, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. As the sun climbs higher in the sky, Ivy prepares to return to the territory that rejected her, to face the man who murdered her mother, and to risk everything for a woman who showed her kindness when nobody else would. But this time, she's not going as Jonathan Sullivan's worthless daughter. She's going as Ivy Ravenclaw, daughter of legends, mate to an alpha who sees her true worth, and a woman with nothing left to lose. The game is about to begin, and this time, she intends to win. At 11:30, Ivy's phone buzzes with a text from Victoria. Convoy departing in 10 minutes. Route 47 to Mountain Pass. Guards are bored and overconfident. Good luck, sister. It's not much, but it's enough. As Ivy prepares to walk into the lion's den, she carries with her the strength of her true heritage, the love of her chosen family, and the absolute certainty that some things are worth any risk. The time for running is over. Now, it's time to fight. Chapter 7. Blood Moon Rising. The abandoned gas station on the border between territories looks like something from a horror movie. Rusted pumps, broken windows, and weeds growing through cracked asphalt. Ivy sits in Camden's sedan, watching the sun climb toward its noon position, while her heart hammers against her ribs like a caged bird. Remember, you're not the same person who left here a month ago, Camden says from the driver's seat, his golden eyes fierce with protective intensity. You're stronger now, awakened. Don't let them convince you otherwise. Through her earpiece, she can hear the steady breathing of the Midnight Ridge team positioned throughout the surrounding forest. Thomas and 5 other wolves have already moved ahead to the mountain pass, while Camden will shadow the convoy at a distance once the exchange is made. Vehicle approaching from the east. Elena's voice crackles through the comm system from her mobile command center. 3 black SUVs, just like Victoria's posts indicated. Ivy's mouth goes dry as the convoy pulls into the abandoned lot. Jonathan emerges from the lead vehicle, flanked by 4 armed guards she doesn't recognize. Mercenaries by the look of them, with cold eyes and military bearing. These aren't Red Moon Pack members. They're Harrison's people, which means the old Alpha is already asserting control over the situation. Victoria steps out of the second SUV, her blonde hair gleaming in the sunlight. She's dressed like she's attending a society function rather than a kidnapping, but Ivy catches the nervous glances she keeps shooting at the mercenaries. The girl may be cruel, but she's not stupid. She knows she's playing with fire. The third vehicle remains closed, its tinted windows hiding whatever, or whoever, might be inside. Well, Jonathan calls out as Ivy approaches on foot, leaving Camden's car at the tree line. The prodigal daughter returns. I was beginning to think you'd choose selfishness over family loyalty. Where is she? Ivy demands, stopping just outside grabbing range. Her newly awakened senses can detect multiple scents. Fear, anticipation, and underneath it all, the familiar smell of Meredith's lavender perfume from the third SUV. Safe and sound. Jonathan replies with that smug smile she's learned to hate, though I'm afraid the accommodations have been rather rustic. Mountain camping isn't for everyone, especially women of a certain age. One of the mercenaries steps forward. A scarred man with dead eyes and hands that look like they've strangled more than their share of victims. Enough talk. Boss wants this wrapped up clean and fast. Of course, Jonathan says quickly, his beta nature instinctively deferring to the more dominant predator. Ivy. Meet Commander Burke. He represents Alpha Harrison's interests in this transaction. Burke looks Ivy up and down like she's livestock at auction, and she has to fight the urge to let her newly awakened alpha power flare. She's smaller than the photos suggested. You sure she can breed successfully? The clinical discussion of her reproductive capacity makes Ivy's skin crawl, but she forces herself to remain calm. I want to see my aunt first. Proof of life before I agree to anything. Burke nods to one of his men, who opens the rear door of the third SUV. Meredith emerges, and Ivy's heart breaks at the sight of her. The older woman's face is bruised, her clothes torn and dirty, and she moves with the careful gait of someone nursing injured ribs. Ivy, no, Meredith calls out, tears streaming down her face. Don't do this for me. I'm not worth... Burke's backhanded blow sends her sprawling to the asphalt. Shut up, old woman. Nobody asked for your opinion. The casual violence flips a switch in Ivy's mind. Her wolf surges forward, bringing with it the full weight of her alpha heritage. The temperature around her seems to drop several degrees as power radiates from her small frame. Touch her again, Ivy says quietly, and I'll tear your throat out with my bare hands. Burke's eyes widen slightly as he recognizes what he's facing. Not the cowering Omega he'd been told to expect, but an alpha in the early stages of awakening. His hand moves instinctively toward the weapon at his hip. Now, Jonathan intervenes quickly, sensing the dangerous shift in dynamics. Let's all stay civilized. Ivy, your cooperation ensures your aunt's continued well-being. Resist, and she suffers the consequences. Through her earpiece, Ivy hears Camden's voice. Convoy is moving in 30 seconds. Victoria just posted their route update. Stay strong. She forces herself to nod submissively, playing the role of defeated victim even as her mind calculates distances and escape routes. I'll come peacefully. Just don't hurt her anymore. Burke relaxes slightly, mistaking her compliance for surrender. Smart girl. Boss likes them with some spirit, but not too much fight. They load Ivy into the second SUV with Victoria, while Meredith is kept in the third vehicle with 2 guards. As the convoy pulls out of the abandoned station, Ivy catches a glimpse of Camden's sedan, following at a discreet distance through the side mirror. You know this isn't going to end well for any of us, Ivy says quietly to Victoria as they drive through the winding mountain roads. Victoria's confident facade cracks slightly. Daddy says Harrison will honor the agreement once you're properly mated. The territorial concessions alone will set Red Moon Pack up for decades. And what about you? What happens to Victoria Sullivan once she becomes a witness to kidnapping and forced marriage? The question hits home. Victoria's hands twist in her lap as she stares out at the passing forest. Harrison promised Daddy that I'd be safe, that he'd find me a suitable mate among his allies. Harrison's promises are worth less than dirt, Ivy replies. Ask his previous wives. Oh wait, you can't. They're all dead. The convoy slows as they approach the mountain pass, exactly where Camden predicted they would travel. Through the comm system, Ivy can hear Thomas positioning his team along the rocky ridges that overlook the narrow road. Movement in the trees, one of Burke's men reports from the front seat. Could be wildlife, but the first rifle shot takes out the lead vehicle's front tire, sending it skidding into the guardrail with a crash of twisted metal. The convoy lurches to a halt as mercenaries pour from the vehicles, weapons drawn and eyes scanning the surrounding forest. It's an ambush, Burke shouts into his radio. All units, defensive positions. Protect the cargo at all costs. Through the chaos, Ivy hears Camden's voice in her earpiece. Now! Get to your aunt! She doesn't hesitate. Her door handle yields to alpha strength as she tears it clean off, rolling from the moving vehicle as Victoria screams in panic. Bullets whine overhead as the Midnight Ridge wolves open fire from concealed positions, their military precision evident in every shot. Burke spins toward her, his weapon tracking her movement, but he's forgotten one crucial detail. Ivy is no longer the broken girl who fled Red Moon territory. She's the daughter of Marcus Ravenclaw, and for the first time in her life, she has something worth fighting for. Her alpha roar shakes the mountain as she launches herself at Burke, her partially shifted claws raking across his gun arm. The weapon spins away into the underbrush as they hit the ground hard, rolling in a tangle of violence and desperation. "You little bitch," Burke snarls, his own partial shift revealing yellowed fangs and pale eyes. "Harrison's going to enjoy breaking you." But as they grapple, Ivy feels something she's never experienced before. The absolute certainty of her own power. Burke is strong, trained, and ruthless, but he's facing an awakened alpha fighting for her family. There's no contest. Her claws find his throat just as Camden emerges from the forest, his own wolf form magnificent and terrifying. More Midnight Ridge warriors pour from the trees, overwhelming the remaining mercenaries with coordinated precision. "Ivy!" Meredith's voice cuts through the battle as she stumbles from the damaged SUV, supported by Thomas, who has already secured her freedom. Jonathan attempts to flee on foot, but Victoria, in a moment of surprising courage, trips him as he runs past their overturned vehicle. "Enough!" she screams. "I'm tired of being afraid. I'm tired of living with your lies." Camden shifts back to human form, his eyes blazing with alpha authority as he surveys the defeated mercenaries. "Jonathan Sullivan, you are under arrest for kidnapping, conspiracy, and the murder of Rebecca Sullivan. The Pack Council will hear your crimes." "You can't prove anything," Jonathan gasps, blood running from a cut on his forehead. "It's her word against mine, and who's going to believe?" "Me." Victoria steps forward, her phone in her hand. "I recorded everything, Daddy. Your confession about the Nightshade, your deal with Harrison, your threats against Aunt Meredith. It's all here, time-stamped and uploaded to the cloud." The final piece of Jonathan's world crumbles as he realizes his own daughter has betrayed him, not out of love for Ivy, but out of self-preservation and a desperate desire to finally escape the toxic web he's created around their family. As the smoke clears and the wounded are tended, Ivy finds herself standing at the edge of the mountain pass, looking out over the valley where her new life waits. Camden's arms wrap around her from behind, solid and warm and absolutely certain. "It's over," he murmurs against her hair. "Jonathan will face justice. Harrison's alliance is broken, and you're free to choose your own future." Ivy leans back into his embrace, feeling the last chains of her old life finally shatter. She's no longer Jonathan Sullivan's worthless daughter or Harrison's unwilling bride. She's Ivy Ravenclaw, alpha in her own right, and for the first time in her life, she's exactly where she belongs. Chapter 8. New Moonrise. 6 months later, Ivy stands at the altar of the Midnight Ridge Chapel, her hands trembling, not with fear, but with overwhelming joy. The sanctuary is filled with wolves from both territories, former Red Moon Pack members who chose to follow their new alpha, and Midnight Ridge wolves who have welcomed their integration with open arms. The wedding dress belonged to Camden's mother, altered to fit Ivy's smaller frame but retaining its timeless elegance. The ivory silk catches the afternoon light streaming through stained glass windows, and the Ravenclaw family pendant, recovered from her mother's belongings, rests against her throat like a blessing. "You look beautiful," Meredith whispers from the front pew, tears of happiness streaming down her face. The older woman has recovered fully from her ordeal, finding new purpose as the Pack's unofficial counselor for wolves transitioning between territories. Camden waits at the altar, magnificent in his formal black suit, his golden eyes never leaving her face. Beside him stands Thomas as best man, while Elena serves as Ivy's maid of honor, her proud smile radiant with maternal affection. But perhaps the most surprising sight is Victoria, sitting in the second pew wearing a soft blue dress and an expression of genuine happiness. The past months have transformed Jonathan's spoiled daughter into something approaching a decent person, her cooperation with the Pack Council's investigation earning her clemency and a chance at redemption. "We gather today," begins Elder Morrison, Camden's great uncle and the Pack's spiritual leader, "to witness the binding of two souls, two alphas, two territories united in love and purpose." The traditional ceremony takes on deeper meaning given everything they've survived to reach this moment. When Camden takes her hands, Ivy feels the familiar spark of their mate bond, stronger now after months of courtship and careful trust building. "Ivy Ravenclaw," Camden says, his voice carrying clearly through the chapel. "You came to me broken and convinced of your own worthlessness. But I saw the truth. A warrior princess who simply needed to remember her crown. Will you rule beside me as equal partner, not as Luna to my alpha, but as alpha to alpha, leader to leader?" The vows they've written together reflect their unique situation. Two powerful wolves choosing to share authority, rather than one submitting to the other. It's unprecedented in Pack tradition, but then everything about their relationship has challenged conventional wisdom. "Camden Blackstone," Ivy responds, her voice strong and sure. "You saved me from drowning in my own pain and taught me that strength comes not from dominance, but from love. Will you help me heal our joined territories, protect the wolves who need sanctuary, and build something better than what came before?" "I will," he says simply, and the words carry the weight of absolute certainty. The ring exchange draws gasps from the assembled Pack members. Camden's ring bears the Midnight Ridge crest, combined with Ravenclaw symbols, while Ivy's features intertwined wolf heads, representing their united territories. They're not just wedding rings. They're symbols of a new kind of leadership. "By the ancient rites and modern law," Elder Morrison intones, "I pronounce you mated for life, bonded in blood and soul, leaders of the Moonridge Pack." The new territory name had been Ivy's suggestion, a combination of their histories that honors both legacies while looking toward the future. The former Red Moon lands have been transformed over the past months, with Camden's resources funding infrastructure improvements and Ivy's knowledge of the terrain guiding strategic development. As they kiss, sealing their bond before Pack and family, Ivy feels the last pieces of her fractured soul clicking into place. She's no longer the girl who cowered in attic rooms and flinched at raised voices. She's become exactly who her mother always believed she could be: strong, confident, and worthy of love. The reception is held in the Great Hall, with long tables groaning under the weight of traditional Pack feast foods. The integration of the two communities has progressed remarkably well, helped by Ivy's insistence on addressing past grievances openly and honestly. "Speech! Speech!" the crowd chants as Camden rises, raising his glass of ceremonial wine. "6 months ago," he begins, his voice carrying easily through the hall, "I thought I understood what it meant to be an alpha. I believed strength meant standing alone, making decisions without consultation, bearing the weight of leadership in isolation." He turns to Ivy, his expression soft with love. "Then I met a woman who showed me that true strength comes from connection, that the best leaders serve rather than rule, and that the most powerful bonds are forged in partnership, not dominance." The applause is thunderous, but Camden holds up a hand for silence. "Today we don't just celebrate a marriage. We celebrate the birth of something new. The Moonridge Pack will be a sanctuary for wolves seeking safety, a place where your worth isn't determined by your bloodline or the age at which you first shifted, but by your character and your willingness to contribute to our community." Ivy rises beside him, her own glass reflecting the warm light of dozens of candles. "Many of you knew me as Jonathan Sullivan's worthless daughter, the defective wolf who brought shame to her family. Some of you participated in that cruelty, either through action or silence." Her words carry no bitterness, only truth. "But we're not here to rehash old wounds. We're here to build new dreams." She gestures toward a corner of the hall where architectural plans are displayed, designs for the Rebecca Sullivan Memorial Center, a facility dedicated to helping abused wolves recover and rebuild their lives. "My mother believed that even damaged things could grow into something beautiful Given the right soil and enough care, this center will be her legacy, proof that no wolf is ever truly broken, only waiting for the right environment to heal. The emotional weight of her words brings tears to many eyes, including Victoria's. Jonathan's former golden child has become one of the center's most vocal supporters, her own journey from abuser to advocate serving as inspiration for other wolves struggling with similar transformations. As the evening progresses, Ivy finds herself surrounded by well-wishers and pack members sharing their own stories of redemption and second chances. The Moonridge Pack has become a magnet for wolves seeking refuge from abusive situations, its reputation spreading throughout the supernatural community. Alpha Ivy? A small voice interrupts her conversation with Elena. She turns to find Jamie, a 10-year-old who arrived 3 months ago with his mother, both fleeing an abusive mate situation. I drew you something. The crayon drawing shows 2 wolves standing together on a hilltop, surrounded by a pack of smaller wolves in every color imaginable. At the top, written in careful block letters, are the words, "Thank you for keeping us safe." Ivy kneels to Jamie's level, accepting the artwork with reverence. "This is beautiful, sweetie. Thank you for making it for me. Mom says you used to be scared too, but you got brave," Jamie says with the brutal honesty of childhood. "Is that true?" "Very true," Ivy admits, glancing up at Camden, who has been watching the exchange with soft eyes. "Being brave doesn't mean you're never scared. It means you do what's right even when you are scared." As the reception winds down and guests begin to depart, Ivy and Camden steal a moment alone on the terrace overlooking their combined territories. The moon hangs full and bright above them, its silver light painting the landscape in ethereal beauty. "Any regrets?" Camden asks, his arm sliding around her waist with familiar comfort. Ivy considers the question seriously, thinking of all the pain and struggle that led them to this moment. "None. Every terrible thing that happened brought me here, to you, to this life we're building together. I wouldn't change a single moment, even the parts with Jonathan and Harrison, especially those parts. They taught me what I was capable of surviving, what I was willing to fight for." She turns in his arms, her hands framing his face. "They showed me that I deserved better, and more importantly, they prepared me to recognize it when it found me. Their kiss is soft and sweet, full of promise and certainty. In the distance, they can hear the sounds of their pack settling in for the night. Children being tucked into bed, night shift guards taking their positions, wolves who have found safety and belonging finally able to rest easy. What do you think the future holds?" Camden murmurs against her lips. Ivy smiles, her heart full to overflowing with love and possibility. "Everything we can imagine and more than we dare dream. We're going to change the world, Camden Blackstone. One rescued wolf at a time." As they stand together under the moonlight, Alpha and Alpha, partners in all things, the future stretches before them bright with hope. The girl who was once called worthless has become a leader, a healer, a symbol of what's possible when someone believes in your potential, even when you can't see it yourself. The Moonridge Pack sleeps peacefully, protected by wolves who understand that true strength comes not from dominance but from love, not from fear but from courage, not from standing alone but from choosing to stand together, and in the morning, they'll wake to build tomorrow, one brave choice at a time.